quick disclaimer before we start today's video. It's a great show, my very first show, but also you may hear some dogs barking, some doors slamming. Unfortunately, I do live in a house and there are people in the house, but nonetheless, it's a great show. Minimal. I haven't watched it yet, so I need to look it back, but I think there's very minimal. But anyway, do it disclaimer. Enjoy the show. My guest on today's show is Brandon Busbee, who formed 1/3 of the podcast London is Blue. It's a very good podcast and also a great interview. We talk about everything from Willian, what's it like interviewing players and everything in between. So please enjoy and let me know who you want to see next. See you around. Welcome. Thank you very much for talking to me. First question is, how do you really get started supporting Chelsea?
So me personally, it started getting big on TV in the early 2000s over in America. So I watched the Euro 2004 tournament. Petr Cech had a monster tournament. I'm a goalkeeper, so he was one that I pretty much kind of pegged as my favorite player. He signed for Chelsea. And so I followed him there, and it was a good time, obviously, as Jose Mourinho had came into the club that season, signing a ton of players. And those first 2 seasons, as we all know, were fantastic. So I really just fell in love with what the club were doing and the players they had and the success, obviously. And so I continued to follow him. And then, obviously, when Cech left to go to Arsenal, I had to let him go. I stayed behind with Chelsea.
And, you know, you're a huge fan, but also, how did you start your podcast?
Mm-hmm. So in 2014 or so, I just been listening to the Chelsea Fancast, a little bit of the Chelsea podcast. There was one for a little bit that Chelsea in America was doing one, but there really just wasn't a lot out there. I had a really long drive to work and back, and so I was like, wow, I wish there was kind of like a podcast with an American perspective for Chelsea that I could listen to, and it wasn't there. So kind of on a whim, I just threw out a tweet and to see if any would be interested. 2 guys responded, and we just learned from August 2014 on how to do it from scratch. And it's crazy. Now we've been doing it for over 6 years. Never in a million years would have thought it would have gone like that. But really just kind of had the idea, took a chance, and it stuck, and here we are.
I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, you're huge now. Is there any advice on people who want to grow their podcast? Let's say they got to a good level and now they want to get to that next tier. They're in the Championship. They want to get to the Premier League. How do they do that? What's your advice?
Well, the biggest thing when we started is that you have to be consistent, even if you have low numbers or whatever it is. Consistency is the key to building an audience. And then I think really just be willing and open to opportunities. You never know what opportunity is going to kind of take you to the next level. And so we've tried to really engage with as many different people we can. We try to, we've been able to be on Talk Sport. We've been on BBC 5 Live. We've been on, different shows of that nature that are huge. But we've done a lot of smaller shows and podcasts and things to kind of hone our skills to get to that place. So, I would say really just the consistency and make sure you're having fun doing it. We've always focused on doing what we find interesting, and thankfully we found an audience that enjoys that same interests for us. And I think that's what's important, because it's not a forced thing for us. You really have to enjoy what you do so it doesn't become a chore or work, or maybe even kind of you're less authentic to yourself. And then lastly, I would just say, ask for interviews, ask for guest appearances, you'd be surprised at how many people say yes. We've had some pretty big time journalists come on our podcast. All we did was ask, and they're so generous with their time. All we did was we asked the club, and now we've done almost 10 player interviews. It's just one of those things that you never know until you ask. So even if it sounds ridiculous, go for it. Take the shot, and you'd be happily surprised when you get a yes finally.
I mean, you mentioned these interviews. I mean, you had Loftus-Cheek, Willian, You had Ali Riley as well, who was a Chelsea player at the time. What's it like interviewing these players?
Well, obviously we're fans first, so we're a little bit fanboy, and I think they kind of appreciate it too, that they know we're on their side, unlike some interviews that they do. But being just at Cobham is a really special experience in itself. And so when you sit down, you kind of have to wait because obviously the player's on a very tight regimen and schedule. So you spend a lot of time sitting and waiting for them. So you're like kind of getting nervous, like a lot of anticipation building. But once you get there, all the players we've met, Mason, Fick, like you said, Ali Riley, Aaron Cuthbert on the women's team, David Luiz, Willian, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, they're so generous and like so friendly and welcoming. It helped us settle in because I mean, you get nervous no matter how many times you meet with the Chelsea player. It's such a sacred kind of moment, and so to have them just be so personable and relatable as well, it really helps us. But I mean, that's kind of like the pinnacle of any Chelsea fan is meeting these players in person and getting to sit down and have a chat with them. And so it's super unique. We put a lot of time and effort into those conversations because we also realize not everyone gets to have that opportunity. So we want to put a lot of time into, making sure that the conversation we have with them is very relatable. It's not the same old that, they get asked, in traditional media questions. So, yeah, it's just, it's very unique. It's very special, without a doubt.
Top of your head, what has been your favourite interview you've done?
So I would probably say Ruben was a ton of fun because we got to learn so much about him that we didn't know, especially his obsession with tennis. Like, never would have seen it in a million years. Um, and then we just got into a lot of culture stuff. Like, we'd ask him Drake or Kanye and like all these kind of PS or Xbox and FIFA or Fortnite. So we just got to have a lot of like really fun kind of cultural relevant questions for us. And he was just coming off injury, so he was at a really interesting time in his career too. But getting to meet him, he was so nice. He was so humble. He's massive, by the way. Like, he's a huge human being. It was just like kind of an awe with him. And it was funny, like fast forward to Mason and Fick, and those, I mean, they're kids, right? You don't really think about it, but like they don't, I don't know, they have this levity to life that they sit down for an interview like, yeah, whatever, let's go. And Willian and David Luiz are a little bit more measured. So I would say like overall Ruben's been my favorite by far, but Mason and Fick were a ton of fun as well, just because they were having a blast with it. They were relaxed.
Fantastic. I mean, Chelsea at the moment is a truly global brand. You support a team outside your country. Do you ever get any stick because of that on social media?
Oh yeah. I mean, it took us probably 4 years to get over the comment of the people's problem with us was our accent. Why are Americans talking about Chelsea? Like, that's not your place. Go talk about the NFL, NBA. So yeah, we got a lot of comments. We got a lot of negative reviews and things like that in the beginning. But we've gotten over it. I think that, having so many episodes and so many years worth of content and really just, we've always wanted to be a welcoming group, not necessarily, we never have gone out to the point of saying, hey, we know more than you. And so I think just because of the way we positioned ourselves in the market, which was like authentic to ourselves, is we just wanted to talk about the team we loved with other like-minded people. And if you're from Norway, England, South Africa, Australia, wherever in the world, we're down to have a chat and kind of go from there. So I think that that's helped us gain kind of a lot of acceptance. But the biggest thing is, like, we had to fight for it. It was not given to us. We definitely had to put in our time to get there. But we also went to the authorities within the Chelsea community to learn and understand. So we've had Simon Johnson, who used to be at the Evening Standard, who is now at the Athletic. We've had, Chidge on a million times, Marco, Dan Sills, these guys who've like been going to Chelsea for decades. We went to them because we wanted to learn from them and hear what their experience was. Because as most people know, Chelsea started around 2004 to 2008 in America. Like, it is true. So we wanted to go and kind of understand what it's like. Oh, we've also talked to Rick Glanville a lot. We just did the history series with him, the official club historian. So I think we also genuinely went out trying to educate our listeners just like we were educating ourselves, trying to understand what is Chelsea like, what was Chelsea like, and what are the stories behind that. So it took a long time to get past that stigma of being Americans talking about Chelsea, for sure.
I mean, your fellow countryman Christian Pulisic is now at Chelsea. What have you made of his first season? I personally am a huge fan of him. What do you think?
Well, it's definitely a slow start. Frank pretty much kept him under wraps for a couple months. But if you think about it, Jurgen Klopp did that with Fabinho as well when he came to Liverpool, and he ended up and is now an integral part of that team. But we were super impatient. We wanted to see Christian play for Chelsea, but we also didn't want it to be to the detriment of the team. I'm glad he had time to settle life in London, settle in the Premier League, training with the team and things like that. But once he burst onto the scene, in the Champions League, and then he had his hat trick against Burnley, unfortunately, these little injuries have just hampered that momentum. But it got to the point where he was a very crucial player for Chelsea. And at the end of the day, we love Chelsea and we love the U.S. men's national team, but they can live separate. So, for us, we really wanted to make sure that Christian was, performing at the level he needs to, because we also know how big Chelsea are. I mean, a top European club, the expectations are massive. While Borussia Dortmund has had a very high level of success, there's still steps above them, and Chelsea are there. And so it's been great to see him finally break through, crushed with these injuries. But, we've had this weird break in football right now. It sounds like he's healthy, completely healthy and ready to go. So however we wrap up this season, it seems like he'll be an integral part of it again. So again, just pumped. Never, we've signed Miazga a few years back, knew that was never really going to be a thing. So when Christian signed for Chelsea, we're like, this is a real deal. And then for Chelsea to get him, we're really excited because I don't think it was easy. A lot of top clubs were interested in Christian. I couldn't be happier at the success he's had, and know that he's young. He's going to have a lot of great years, hopefully, to give Chelsea as well.
And also, he's big on TikTok. I always see him on social media doing his skills. But I think Matt Miazga is at Reading at the moment on loan.
He is.
So, so there was such big hype around him as well. I was so excited for him, and it hasn't really worked out for him.
No, that would have been the greatest surprise story ever if he broke into Chelsea's even like 18 man squad on a match day. It was never going to happen.
I mean, we've mentioned a young winger, Pulisic, but now we've got Willian, the old veteran. He's going out the door. He looks like he's going. Yeah. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, we were just talking about it with some friends yesterday, actually, because when that news broke. So we got to interview Willian. I think that, his quotes were that he feels like he has a few more years at the top level. So it makes sense why he wants a 3-year contract. I get Chelsea's standpoint, like he, asking for 3 years at the age of 30, 31 is not good business for them right now. And I think Frank has a project, and I think we know what he's going for. And we've already brought in Ziyech, potentially, interested in Sancho. We know that the attacking players and the wingers are going to be a highly contested spot. And Frank also realizes how important it is to have the best players there possible. So I think Willian's been an amazing servant for the club. His ability to perform against Tottenham has been great. For whatever reason, when we had our worst seasons, he seemed to have his best seasons, which is a bit of a bummer for him that he couldn't have a glory season while we were winning trophies. But because of that, that just shows you that, he's really a 7 pretty much every week. The problem is we need people who can have those peaks at 8 or 9s, and he really hasn't had that in the last few years. So I think that this is probably as good of a time as ever to mutually kind of break. But I clap him off and say, great stuff from him. I'm pumped that he spent so many years, 7+ years at Chelsea, definitely contributed to the positive, understand that, where he wants in his career isn't where Chelsea wants to be. And I'm okay with that. I think that, these young, exciting players in all these different positions is Frank's kind of vision right now. And especially financially, you'll be able to get him for a better deal than tying Willian up. Not sure how much you'll get out of him in his later years, but fantastic player for the club overall. I think it was a big coup getting him from Shakhtar when we did. Obviously, we know the chant. Tottenham paid for his flight, and off he went to Chelsea.
I know, but swings and roundabouts. Willian out. Hakim Ziyech has come in.
Yeah.
What do you think? He's a good player, Ziyech.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when Ajax went on their run, I don't know how they didn't get past Spurs in the Champions League final last year. He was integral to that. And then once we signed him, I think we knew we were interested, but I think we were surprised that we signed him 2 weeks after the January window shut. But then all of a sudden the reports come out, we've been scouting for 4 or 5 seasons, that he has the most essentially chances created in any of the top 5 leagues and his assists. So all of a sudden on paper, you're like, wow, this guy like has a lot of end product as well. And, then the YouTube highlights came out as well. And I think we got to see that what he is extremely dynamic. He's extremely attack minded. He's not going to pass back or, probably hold up play. He's going to want to push the tempo. I think that's exactly what Frank's looking for. And again, having his flexibility to play on the wing or almost as a number 10, we've seen Mason Mount play as a number 8, a number 10 out on the wing. Frank likes that, and having his players be able to play in a few different positions. So I think Ziyech fits perfectly with the identity of the team that Frank is going for. So again, it's going to be a big transition from, Ajax to Chelsea, but we know that he can compete in a European competition. I think that's a huge kind of check mark. Now we'll figure out how he fits in the Premier League. But, if Pulisic can figure it out, again, he's not that big. He came from Germany. I think that, Ziyech with time will be able to settle and be super electric for Chelsea, especially when we get those teams in the bottom half of the table that just play with a block 8, block 9. And it takes kind of what we've relied on Hazard for the last couple of seasons to do. Hopefully Ziyech can take some of that creative responsibility and unlock the defense, as we like to call it.
And hopefully we'll have a few friends for Ziyech this summer, a few more teammates if this transfer window goes well. Yeah. Do you personally have someone that you would love Chelsea to sign? Have you got a top target in mind?
I mean, that's a great question. I tend to try to not throw out too many names, but I definitely look at positions and say, I think the left back is going to be weird. I think there's a good chance that Alonso and Emerson are both gone at the beginning of next season, which is weird to think. But I can understand that like a decision needs to be made on the left back. Are we playing with the left wing back? Or are we playing with the traditional left back? Let's figure it out and make a decision. I think the right back is sort of for a long time. I think we need one top center back. And we all know that there's no goals in midfield. So I think they kind of have to figure that spot out. They're going to look for a new forward potentially to support or challenge Tammy. I think that's an interesting call Frank has to make. Does he put all of his trust in Tammy and he sign a backup? Or does he sign someone who's at or above his level and, make Tammy work for that number 9 shirt in the starting spot? But I definitely think that the back line is where we have the most holes, which is kind of weird. So again, does Frank want to stick with Kepa? That's a big call. Does he want to start the left back, start the center back? And then we need a goal scoring threat from midfield. I mean, that's Frank's career in a nutshell, the late run into the box and smashing in goals. We don't have that. Kovacic has been fantastic, but he doesn't score. N'Golo Kante with his injuries, but he never scores. So, I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see, but I think that the team will have a really different look next season and a really different balance to it. And this season, Frank's has been given the time. He's played 4-3-3. He's played 3-5-2, 3-4-3, a little bit of 3-5, 3-4-1-1, different things like that. He's tried a lot. And I think just like we expected, he's trying to figure out what the players can and can't do to see, all right, this is what I want. They can't do it at this level. I need to replace. And I'm sure he's been working with the club diligently on kind of identifying those needs. But I have a feeling that the team and the shape and the style of the team will be significantly different next season than what it was this season. It seems like Frank was really testing the waters and figuring a lot out with the team. and we're still in fourth. So the fact that we've been testing and changing and trying all these things, and we're still in fourth, this is about as good as it could get for Frank in his first season.
Oh, we're still in the Champions League. At this point, we're still in the Champions League. But you mentioned earlier that you were a goalkeeper. We had Petr Cech for so many years, brilliant player, and now we've got Kepa.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on Kepa? I mean, the jury's out, 50-50. Some love him, some hate him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an interesting season for him for sure. When we signed him, I kind of, the guys on the podcast asked me a lot of questions. And what I said, Kepa, like all top professionals, has his strengths. His reflexes and reaction speed is phenomenal. His distribution last season was phenomenal, not this season for some reason. We knew that he wasn't going to be very commanding, especially on crosses. We were going to struggle with that because he's not going to be able to come and get them. And just kind of the physicality of that. So this season, we've seen his shot stopping not be so great, and he's definitely had a huge dip. And I think part of it is just because of the way the team's set up. Last year, under Maurizio Sarri, we had the ball the entire time, 60+% possession every match. So he wasn't really under pressure a lot. This season, Frank is pushing the tempo a lot more. We're throwing more players forward, and we've seen that Chelsea are much more likely to get counterattacked or be able to give up, shots. And his save percentage is I think it's bottom 3 in the league. And again, not all shots are equal, but the stats show that Kepa is having a pretty horrible season this season comparatively. So I think he understandably needs to be under the spotlight. Understandably, he's come in for some criticism. Frank dropped him for a few weeks. He came back a bit better, but the amount that we're paying him and the amount he costs versus what we're getting, I'm worried that he was a very specific purchase for Maurizio Sarri, and Lampard, especially as you said, he played with Petr Cech almost his entire career. I could see him wanting a big, strong, really resilient shot stopper that can come get the ball out of the air, versus Kepa is much more of a specialist. And I think that while Frank can be modern, he's going to want a traditional type goalkeeper. And I think that's why they're looking at some of the young guys coming up in the league right now.
I know. I mean, do you look at Man City and Liverpool with Ederson and Allison? Are you a bit jealous? Because, I mean, they're two top goalkeepers at the moment. Very different to the likes of Cech, but, they're two top players.
Oh, absolutely. Ederson surprised me. I think that was phenomenal scouting from Manchester City. I don't think a lot of people had Ederson on their radar from Portugal, but that was an amazing buy for them. Allison is the one that hurts because Chelsea were in for him. For whatever reason, couldn't get the deal across the line. Maybe because he was too expensive. But then we go and panic buy Kepa for 20 million more. And so it's like, well, we could have potentially had Allison for 55 million, and instead we had Kepa for 70 million. And I think that was one of the things that we really missed the trick on. But I think it just goes to show you, I've always been a big proponent of saying, if you have if you have an okay goalkeeper, you can only be a good team. If you have a great goalkeeper, you can be a great team, because at the end of the day, there's such an Achilles heel of any team. If you have a good goalkeeper, then you're in good situation. If you have an okay or a sporadic or somebody who's not consistent, you're in trouble. And that's what we've seen this season. Kepa just has not been consistent by any means. To be fair, the defense changes all the time, and we've always seen the best teams in the league play the same back 4 or 5, whatever they play, and goalkeeper all season, because they create chemistry. They know each other. Lampard doesn't know his best back line, whether it's a back 5 or a back 3 or back 4. Fick had a huge run in the fall. He's nowhere to be seen now. Christensen all of a sudden seems like the front runner. And so I think part of that has something to do with it. But nonetheless, Kepa hasn't been where he needs to be. So, Manchester City and Liverpool are at the top of the league because they have settled defenses and goalkeeper relationships. They know what to expect from each other. And, they're fantastic. Very different. Those two are very different. But the fact that they're both in the Brazil squad is amazing. They're so blessed down there.
Yeah, you mentioned inconsistencies in our back line, and now we've got inconsistencies in the season. We don't know how it's going to end. How do you think it will end in the end? Do you think it will get voided? What's going to happen? And if it is voided, does that suit Chelsea in a way? Because there was so little expectation on us in the summer.
Yeah. I think they'll find a way to play the remaining matches, because I don't think they can come up with a solution that doesn't end with someone getting completely shafted, whether it's crazy enough Sheffield United trying to get into Europe, whether it's, Manchester United, Tottenham pushing for the last Champions League spot. And then obviously the relegation. This table is so tight. It's tighter than it's been in a long time. And so I think that, if you were to avoid it, there's just too many gaps. I think it leaves out too many answers, unfortunately. I think that even if you kind of end it as is, again, there's still problems. People have played 30 games. Some people played 31 matches. So I think they'll find a way somehow to finish the games. It might not be with fans. It might not be your ideal scenario where you're playing one match every week. But I don't think they have a choice but to somehow take their time and finish the season this summer, or maybe in the early fall, because everyone's kind of getting their summer break right now. So the guys should be essentially able to rest up and kind of recharge, and they can almost finish the last few games of the season, take a month off, and then jump right back into a new season. So that's how I think it'll start. So maybe the Premier League next season starts in October, and they'll find a way to make it work heading into the Euros next summer.
Well, hopefully they make it work. And what are you doing with your spare time at the moment? I think I saw you done a virtual pub the other day on
Yeah.
How did that go?
It was great. We had a nice mix of, obviously mainly Americans, but we had quite a few of our UK friends join as well. And so it was a blast. We had about 30 people, and we just talking about Chelsea and some different things. We, weirdly enough, talked about the NFL quite a bit because, again, all of our British friends are so interested and intrigued by that. So that was fun. But we've been doing, from a podcast standpoint, just kind of trying to do some updates. But you kind of run out of stuff to react to. So it's weird. It's a weird time, that's for sure, when it comes to generating content and everything. But we're just trying to obviously kind of stay inside, stay safe, play by the rules, and do kind of these virtual meetups or hangouts as when we can on the weekends. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to try to post some of our past podcasts after we won trophies. So we've won, I think, 5 trophies since we've started podcasting. And the first one was the League Cup in 2015 under Jose Mourinho. So we're going to repost that, and then kind of the league title, Antonio Conte's league title one, all that stuff. So a little bit of throwback stuff just to kind of pass the time.
And just finally, you're an American. Is there any young American players that are coming through at the moment? For my Football Manager, I'm looking all around. I need some players. Any young Americans that are on your radar that you think are going to be top players?
That's a great question. So if they're not in a European league, I'm not that familiar with them, in all honesty. But it's hard to pick because Julian Green had such a great World Cup, the last one we were in. What would that have been, in 2014? And he's now in the second Bundesliga. So while I want to say, we just don't know with the young American players because we still haven't really figured out a way to cement them into European leagues. But I'm excited for Timothy Weah to see where he does. He's in Ligue 1. Obviously, his father, George Weah, played for Chelsea on loan for half a season, Ballon d'Or winner. So you always want to see, he's an attacking wide player. So he'd be one that'd be fun. But Weston McKennie in the Bundesliga he's probably having a better season than what Christian had until he got injured this season. But as far as the up and comers, I'm terrible with that, especially because the U.S. men's national team didn't make it to the World Cup. So I pretty much put my fandom on pause for them. I said, you need to reorganize yourselves. And when you've got it figured out, then come back to us and we'll pay attention to you again. But no, nothing right now. No World Cup, no qualifiers. I don't know. It's hard to track the national team right now too.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Happy to.
Stay safe as always. Thank you very much. Any hobbies? Have you got any hobbies that you've taken up to in isolation? Any languages?
No languages. We've been doing a lot of puzzles, playing a little FIFA, a little Call of Duty. But yeah, that's about it.
Well, aren't we all? Well, thank you very, very much. I do appreciate it. Stay safe and thank you very much.
Take care.
That's all we got time for on today's show. A huge thanks already, if I haven't said so enough, to Brandon Busbee for his help during this, and also make sure to go check out the London is Pride podcast. The link is in the description. Who do you want me to see next? Would you like to see another episode? Please let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I want to make some money out of this. I'm only joking. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, stay indoors, and see you next time. Bye bye.